My name is Derek Tritz, and I am the station manager for 90 FM. That's more of a question for our question writer, Dak, but I know that it had to do with like that, like how people that are old like him were seeing the future when he was around the time that the I Just Can't Go 55 like song was at like its height. That sort of that era where they people or the government was kind of like encroaching on people with the speed limit a little bit. Was that like the real reason? It was probably just because they needed an idea, but yeah. It influences a few of the questions and all of the merch. So the merch is like the biggest thing that it influences. The questions can have things to do with the theme and also cannot. So like there might be questions that are associated with like sci-fi films and stuff, and then there's also questions that are just about baseball. You know, that they don't have to be they don't have to be about Trivia 55 No Limit or anything like that. It's a whole year-long endeavor, so our question writer, Dak, and the co-writer, Alex, basically starting today, or the day after Trivia last year, are thinking like, okay, what am I watching right now that would make a good trivia question? I know that Dak explained to me that there's been times when he's like at an airport or on the plane even, and he sees movies that people are watching, and he, you know, kind of eavesdrops, like, you know, side eyes over there, and is like, oh, that'd make a good trivia question. So it's a whole year-long process until we get to the time when we're preparing for the contest. I believe, if I know the story right, which I don't know, I know all the facts, but it started out as just a smaller contest to help raise funds for the station originally, and they heard like about something or some radio station in Appleton doing a similar thing, so they did it here, and I believe the first one was like 8 hours, and then it over the years worked its way up to the colossal 54 that we have now. There were some difficulties. There were some technical difficulties that we had, but we got the contest off the ground. For those who don't know, we can blame a little-known company called AT&T. They had cut all the landlines and like phone lines, or they announced that they were going to do so this year, and we had called them in January. In January, they had said, yes, we can keep it open for you through May this year. So basically, you'd be good for this year's trivia, but you have to find another solution for next year. And we were like, okay, that gives us a full entire year. Amazing. Awesome. Then, fast forward 3 weeks before the contest, I'm on spring break, and I see an email pop up in my inbox that says, hey, we actually can't do it this year. We cut the line, we tried to get it approved to stay active, but it got denied. So sorry, you can try our internet plan for IP phones, and then we were just left, like, we were left out to dry, essentially. So we got IP phones from a company called Uma, I think, and those IP phones, to put it lightly, sucked. We were having a whole slew of network issues, which those technically weren't the phone's fault. I burst into a sprint to my car, drove over to T-Mobile, and opened up an account with them so we could get an internet access point from T-Mobile for the station to help with the phones. Then, once we got like some firmware updates for the IP phones, and once things like looked like they were about to work, and we got things back on the network, back on the university network, so we didn't have to pay $1 million for the bandwidth on the T-Mobile hotspot when people called in. We finally had players call in, and because there's so many trivia players, they basically broke the phones. It overloaded them. The calls were dropping in the middle of people talking, and it just wasn't working. But thanks to one guy named Q, the hero of this year's trivia, who was playing the contest and knew a lot about technology and just really wanted to help us out. He was an alum here. Came into the station, helped us troubleshoot the phones, eventually figured out that the phones weren't going to work for this scale of a competition, and went into the back room just over yonder, and whipped up a Google form and coded an a Google sheet to input the answers and print them off at the intervals, as long as someone was hitting the print button. That would be Dad's computers. And they won last year. They've won a lot of years now, for a while now. Coming in second place was Trivial Pursuit. The worst part was when the phones weren't working, and we didn't have anyone helping us other than ourselves. It was pretty dark. It was pretty dark. We were really concerned that we weren't going to be able to figure out a way to do the competition. We knew in the back of our heads that we would find out a way. At least most of us did. But there was a time during that span, like at the forefront of our minds, where we were essentially like, what are we gonna do? The phones, like, we can't get them to work. And thankfully we got past that. The best part was probably the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift with you guys.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was my favorite part. No, but the theme will be revealed during 90FM's Radiothon event in the first full weekend of December.